Hey everybody, it's Scott Shetler and welcome to this week's episode of Strength and Health TV. This week for our episode, the topic is going to be recovery and restoration techniques. Now, I think this is a very overlooked part of the training process, but I think it's a very important part of the training process, particularly as we get older. Now, a few years back, I had the pleasure of having Dr. Ed Thomas at my gym for a few hours to do some training with a few of us. And if you don't know Ed, you really ought to look him up because the guy's amazing. He's probably one of the brightest minds in physical culture that I've ever come across. And I really think he's probably forgotten more about health and fitness than I'll ever know. The guy's an absolute genius and complete honor to train with him. I remember he was always talking about how fitness should be restorative, or at least a significant part of it, and he kind of summed it up by saying to me, fitness shouldn't hurt. And if you think about it, when you look at people just walking around, they're always complaining about all these injuries that they've suffered from training and competition and this, that, and the other, and I think a lot of that could be prevented, or at least the likelihood of it, lessened if people put a little bit more emphasis on restoration and recovery. Like I said, I think this becomes even more important as we get a little bit older and our hormonal levels start to decline and we don't recover from heavy training as we used to when we were younger. If you're interested, I definitely recommend checking out one of the more recent Live Life Aggressively podcast interviews where Mike Mahler and Sincere Hogan talked with Steve Maxwell, and this topic came up, and Steve really made a great point. I believe Steve's in his 60s now and is just an amazing human being. The guy's in fantastic shape. He takes care of himself, he trains hard, and he definitely knows a thing or two about recovery. And one of the things that he had mentioned was, as he's gotten older, he's found that it takes fewer high-intensity training sessions to get the results that he needs, and he's just much healthier by focusing more on some type of activity daily and having a couple really intense training sessions a week. Whereas if he pushed hard, more frequently, he might not recover like he could when he was much younger. So that's definitely a great point, and it's one from experience. And I know many people who are late 30s, early 40s, and beyond who are finding the same to be true, that in order to recover, they need fewer high-intensity training sessions and more frequent lower-intensity recovery or restorative-based training sessions. And it's not just training, there are other forms of restoration that play a part, and we're going to talk about them here. So briefly, I'm going to go down a list of some different restoration practices that can be beneficial, and I'll talk a little bit about each. And then I would definitely recommend that you look into this a little bit more deeply for yourself to find out how some of these practices can benefit and assist your training. If you've got any questions about it, feel free to contact me. I love talking about this type of stuff, so you can get a hold of me at my email or through my website. I'll put the links, or social media, which I'll put all the links down in the notes and below this video. But if we look at some restoration practices that are pretty common, one of the most common is cold therapy, and there are many different types of cold therapy people use. There's the cryo chambers, the cryo saunas, I think they're called, that a lot of people are using, where they actually pay to go to a facility. I've not tried that yet. I've heard very good things about it. I know Mike Mahler's a big proponent of it, and I know some kettlebell sport athletes who have done it and spoken very, very highly of it. So you've got your cryotherapy centers, you've got ice or cold baths, and then you've also got cold showers. Those are three pretty popular forms of cold therapy. After that, you've got heat therapy. Typically, people are using things like a hot tub, a sauna, or a hot shower. I guess you could also use cold or hot, packs placed directly on the muscles as well, but it just seems like the baths or the showers would be a little bit more efficient at getting your entire body. Unless, of course, you have an injury to a specific area, then you may need to ice or to heat a specific joint or a specific muscle. But so there's hot and cold therapy. Then you've got contrast therapy, which is where you apply both practices. You'll typically do cold therapy for a period, maybe 30 to 60 seconds. You'll follow it up by hot therapy for maybe 60 to 90 seconds. That can be done in baths, it can be done in showers, just whatever you have access to that you can get from one mode to the other very quickly. Then you have various types of tissue and body practices. You got things like massage, restorative massage, or really deep tissue massage. You've got different types of active and passive stretching, joint mobility exercise. You've got active release technique therapy, chiropractic therapy. There's other therapy modalities like Graston. There's so many different types of therapists and therapy practices out there. These are just some of the more popular ones, which would be things like ART, they'd be things like chiropractic, massage, and such. Then you've got recovery training, and exercise can be a great form of restoration and recovery. It's obvious you wouldn't be using very intense, and when I say intense, we're talking about a percentage of 1 repetition maximum. You wouldn't be using high intensity as far as loading prescriptions go. You might be doing things more like very lightweight exercise. You might be doing things like body weight exercise. Some of my favorites are Indian club, swinging for the upper body with the lighter clubs, various shoulder mobility drills and stuff with the Indian clubs, using some of the heavier clubs like my favorite, the ADEX club, the ADEX adjustable exercise club. You use that for different types of swings and pendulums and different types of mobility exercises for the shoulders. So you've got a whole variety of active recovery training techniques. You can use jump stretch bands to lighten a barbell and do lightened bench presses, like a reverse band type bench with a light weight, and just do lots of repetitions. But characteristically, with active recovery training, you're going to be focused on very lightweight, and you're going to be doing more reps. The idea is that you're increasing your circulation. You're getting free blood flow to the muscles that you might have used in a training session prior. So for instance, if you did a heavy upper body day, if you did a heavy bench press day, you might come in the next day and do some very light upper body training with some light weights, or using that reverse band modality just to pump a lot of blood through those muscles to assist with the recovery, bringing blood and nutrients to the muscles. So there are many different types of active recovery exercise and active recovery training. You also have things like various joint distraction exercises. I know this tends to be very popular in the powerlifting circles. If you're familiar with Donnie Thompson, who is one of the greatest powerlifters in competitive powerlifting history, he's a big fan of joint distraction and has a lot of great resources. I think I read an article in Power magazine where he showed about 6 or 7 different exercises using the heavy jump stretch bands for different joint distraction for your hips, your back, your shoulder, and various other exercises. Joint distraction can be a great thing to do. I've done a lot of it with my lower back, my hips, and my shoulders, and it's definitely a good practice to look into. You've got rest, sleep. I guarantee, I know for myself, I don't get enough sleep, but many people don't get enough sleep. The recommendation is usually right around 8 hours, give or take, a night. Some people also benefit from having a daily nap. The nap doesn't have to be long. I usually do better when I get to take one, which isn't very often, but I've done really good with maybe about a 20 to a 30-minute nap. I found that if I sleep during the day for longer than 30 minutes, like right around 40-45 minutes or more, that I tend to be a little bit worse off when I wake up. But if I can set my alarm for maybe 20-25 minutes and just take a quick nap during the early mid-afternoon, I really feel great throughout the rest of the day. So sleep is one of the best forms of recovery and restoration. And it's definitely something that I don't think people on average get enough of. Then you also have things like mental relaxation strategies. You've got meditation, you've got, one of my favorites is Qigong and different types of breathing exercise. There's a funny quote that I saw about meditation. You should meditate for 20 minutes daily, unless of course you don't have time. If you don't have time to meditate for 20 minutes daily, you should meditate for 60 minutes daily. So think about that one for a minute. But various types of meditation and mental relaxation exercises are fantastic for calming the body down, for de-stressing, and for assisting with restoration and recovery. Then of course, after all this, you've got nutrition. And it's crazy to me how many people put so much effort into training. They put so much effort into, whether it's training for sport, whether it's training for health, fitness, and then they eat a crappy diet. And it just boggles my mind how many people out there eat shit for the bulk of what they're consuming on a daily basis, and they don't focus on high quality nutrients. Now, if you know me well enough, you know that I'm a huge proponent of the plant-based diet, and one of the greatest benefits to a plant-based diet, or shifting to a predominantly plant-based diet, even if you're not willing or not ready to adopt a totally vegan strategy of eating, is that the more plant foods that you include in your nutrition, the greater the nutrient density. And that's, if you talk to athletes who are vegan, or if you talk to people who train very, very hard, follow plant-based diet, one of the commonalities that you see is all these people talk about how much better the recovery is post-training. They're not sore for as long as they used to be. There might be a link between reduced inflammation for people that follow a higher plant-based diet or a totally vegan diet. So now I'm not talking about a junk food variation of those diets, I'm talking about a healthy, whole food, plant-based diet. So there's some of the things that you see with a diet that is so nutrient dense. If you're eating a bunch of fast food, if you're eating a bunch of junk food, you may be getting a lot of calorically dense foods, but the nutrient, there's nothing nutritious in those foods, and your body's still starving for nutrition. That's why you can eat like 2,000-3,000 calories in one meal from fast food and still feel hungry, because your body's not getting the stuff that it needs on the micronutrient level, the vitamins, the minerals, the enzymes, the phytonutrients and chemicals that are in plant-based foods. So that's something to consider as well. Plant-based foods also have a ton of fiber. Fibers, that's something that not enough people get in their diet as well. So definitely good nutrition is one of the best forms of restoration and recovery. And this kind of piggybacks on last week's episode where I talked a little bit about pre and post nutrition strategies. So definitely not just talking about pre and post training nutrition, but you've also got what you're doing the rest of the day. You can't just have a good recovery and energy meal around a training session and expect that will take care of it. You've got to eat well the rest of the day. I'm not by any means 100% clean with my diet, but I'd say that about 90% of the time, 85 to 90% of the time, I'm eating a clean, whole food, plant-based diet. So that way I can get away with having my favorite things like cookies or a cake or whatever plant-based vegan treat that I'm into at the time. Donuts are definitely a big favorite of mine. But by eating predominantly 85-90% of the time a high-quality, whole food, plant-based diet, I can get away with a little bit of cheat meals here and there and still not put on extra body fat, keep my energy levels up, still recover well, and overall feel pretty good and be healthy. So those are some strategies when it comes to restoration. You got the cold therapy, heat therapy, contrast therapy, various types of body work, massage, active release technique, chiropractic, stretching, joint mobility. You've got active recovery training, using light weights, higher reps to help shuttle blood and nutrients into the muscles that you used in a heavy training session from the previous day. You've got the various joint distraction exercises with jump stretch bands that I presented. You've got sleep and rest. You've got mental relaxation strategies and meditation strategies. You've got nutrition. So between all of those things that I listed out, it should give you enough to start looking into and maybe evaluating what you're doing and finding out what you might be lacking, and you might want to try some of these strategies. I would definitely start by getting the nutrition in check and getting the rest and sleep in check, because those are two of the biggest things. You do them daily. Some of these other strategies you might not need to do daily, particularly if you follow something like the BioForce HRV system. The BioForce HRV system, or heart rate variability monitoring system, is something that was developed by a professional named Joel Jamieson, and we've been using this with one of my competitive athletes, a swimmer that I trained, Carl. We've been using this for probably close to a year now, maybe, or a little under a year. And what we found is that through monitoring his heart rate variability, that based on the daily readings that we get, it shows whether he's totally prepared for high stress training, or if he's a little bit more stressed. And what the HRV system shows is that if he's in a state of higher sympathetic dominant stress, or if he's in a state of higher parasympathetic dominant stress. So it actually shows you how you can monitor and see where the amount of stress is and where he needs to recover. And in the HRV monitoring system, in the manual, Joel even breaks down, based on if you're sympathetic dominant or parasympathetic dominant, the recovery strategies to implement. So for instance, if you're sympathetic dominant, You should implement things like recovery training or restorative training strategies, regenerative soft tissue therapy, hot water therapy, and mental relaxation. Now, if you're parasympathetic dominant, he recommends the recovery training. He recommends more intensive deep tissue therapy, cold therapy or contrast therapy, and sauna. So based on whether you're parasympathetic or sympathetic dominant, you can take these strategies and apply them to either for greater results when it comes to recovery and restoration. So it's, like I said, restoration and recovery is definitely something that I don't think people put enough emphasis on, and it is something that I think we need to focus on more, particularly if you're an athlete who's training at a very, very high level and you're stressing your body from training. You've got emotional stress, you've got the anxiety and the adrenaline spikes that come along with competition, training for competition. It can be very stressful to the body, so recovery and restoration is very, very important. If you're just training at the recreational level, but you are training really, really hard, if you've got a very busy lifestyle, if you're not getting enough sleep, there are so many factors that all affect your ability to recover. And if you're in a state of where you're not recovered well, if you're in a state of just completely wiped out, you haven't been sleeping, your nutrition's not good, going to the gym and doing a really heavy workout probably isn't a great idea. So finding some way to monitor your stress level is really important as well. So hopefully this episode gave you some cool ideas when it comes to the topic of restoration and recovery. Like I said, if you've got any questions about this, or if you've got any suggestions for future episodes, for topics for future episodes, please leave them in the comments below. I hope you like this week's episode, and until next time, stay strong and stay healthy.